Okay, thank you. Sister Megan Rice is joining me. Megan Gillespie Rice, anti-nuclear activist and Roman Catholic religious sister of the Society of the Holy Child Jesus and former missionary. You're notable for breaking into the Y-12 National Security Complex in Oak Ridge, Tennessee at the age of 82 with the Transform Now Plowshares group in an anti-war protest referred to as the biggest security breach in the history of the nation's atomic complex. Can you just talk a little bit about how you got involved? I know you've been an activist for quite some time.
How we got involved?
Yeah, initially.
Yes. Yes, I think I've been the recipient of the life experiences of many extremely knowledgeable and compassionate people who have been watching very closely the whole nuclear weapons industrial complex, which has evolved since 1943. When the preparation began for what was made use of in 1945, 70 years ago next week. Yeah, we celebrate the anniversary. So it began, is that in general? What I know is because I've happened to have been gifted by associating with people who had firsthand experience of being involved both in the making and in the observing of the results, probably 6 weeks after the bomb itself in the city of Nagasaki.
Right.
Yes, and
go ahead.
And also, yes.
I was just going to ask you, how influential were your parents in your activism?
Well, both my parents were very compassionate people, so we say socially just people who were concerned about the unfairness in society, whatever is giving root cause to that unfairness, which really creates a very large poor population and a very small privileged, wealthy population in this country.
Right.
I can give examples of that as far back as the Depression, when my father was working at Bellevue Hospital, which is the free hospital in New York City, public hospital, now under the leadership and then also, I believe, of the New York University Medical School. My father was connected with that, and so he was teaching young doctors obstetrics and gynecology through serving in their internships at Bellevue Hospital. So he, my father, and his students were learning from the actual suffering of the poorest of the poor in Manhattan during those years, and the victims of much abuse caused by the unfair society, really, in their poverty and hopelessness.
Right.
And then my mother was a student at Columbia University in the 1930s and early 40s when she was studying the effects of slavery on the history of the United States, with a focus on the American Catholic practice with regard to the practice of slavery. And so she reported on that and would educate us during those years about the gravely unfair treatment of other human beings caused by racism and by slavery. It's evidence in the practice of slavery in this country, which was, as we know, such a grave political or historical dilemma and a historical mistake, and immoral activity that we are heir to in this country today.
If I could just ask you a general question, because I recently posted an article about Eric Garner, the 1-year anniversary that just happened with Eric Garner, and there's a complaint form that Eric Garner had written in his own handwriting about being cavity searched on the street, that someone had sent that to me, and I uploaded it and put it in this article, and people commented on it, and it amazes me the number of people that want to blame the victim. I hear what you're saying, and how you were raised, and your parents taught you the injustices and to have compassion. And so many people today, they want to blame the victim and gang up on them and make it be their fault and sort of join in, as opposed to seeing the injustices and having the compassion and blaming the people, the perpetrators, instead.
Yes. Yeah, instead of blaming the cause, the root cause of all of this. Thank you. Yes, that is the crux of the problem. And when we become truly aware of the real history, then we can discover for ourselves the root cause of all injustice, which usually is defined as profiteering, and that profiteering needs to be protected in a guarded way, so that even the history is often written in a miseducating way. The truth is not told. People are in denial of the fact that they are practicing human injustice.
Right, like they don't even realize. I feel like it's just an unconscious program how most people just bail out the perpetrators and continue to fault and blame the powerless, which
the victims of the injustice, right?
And that makes absolutely no sense to me, because how can powerless people to be blamed because they're powerless?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's that whole ability to think critically, which is a gift that we receive in our education. If education is consciously directed at helping people to think critically, it's a gift and it's a skill. Often it's not. The people are not being given that form of education.
It's as if people can't tell the difference between what's causing and creating certain conditions. They blame the conditions rather than what is creating the conditions.
Yeah, exactly. You're expressing it very clearly.
Oh, good. And it says in this Daily News article that you spent 40 years teaching in the poorest parts of Africa and returned to the U.S. due to malaria. You were living in deplorable prison conditions, wearing a beige uniform, stuffed with 111 other women, in a single room at the federal prison right here in New York City, and that was in 2012, I believe. Or no, sorry.
Just this year, right? From 2000, March of 2014 till May of 2015.
And so, talk about trying to break into the Y-12 Oak Ridge nuclear facility. It wasn't too difficult, was it?
No. We found that we were able to do it unopposed. We didn't have any idea, but we did make a plan, and we had a kind of map that can be gotten from satellite information on the internet. And so we were able to pass through the first fence, which we found in the middle of the woods on one side of the ridge, which lines the nuclear facility of Oak Ridge. And after that, we were able to pass through the rest of the woods, come to the second ridge and mount that and find that we could, in full view, although it was by about 4:30 in the morning before sunrise, but as daylight lit up this entire facility, which extends, I think, about 15 miles in perimeter in between the two ridges that form the city of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And we were then descended down, and within 15 minutes, I'm sure we were able to neatly pass through each of the three perimeter fences which enclose the actual building where the world's largest storage of highly enriched uranium is kept, enough to build 10,000 new nuclear bombs or refurbish old ones, and is constantly being produced by the uranium processing facility. And the new uranium processing facility is being built to ensure production for the next 30 years. But no one was there. We had seen the security van pass by outside in the road outside this facility before the three fences. And so we passed through when the security guard passed us, and were able to get in, and as I say, 15 minutes, and then empty our backpack and with the symbolic instruments that we had brought in order to communicate the real truth about this building, which we know is criminal activity, or housing criminal activity, or storing criminal products, because both our Constitution holds the country accountable under and subject to validly signed international laws, treaties, and agreements, which state that weapons of mass destruction can never be used in war, can never be used according to the laws of war, and would be immoral and criminal if people continue to manufacture weapons that are criminal. So we had a few symbols to label the building with, and one of them was blood, human blood of three people who had offered and volunteered to allow a little baby bottle of their blood to be collected because they themselves could not be with us, and but wanted it to be used as a symbol and sign to reveal the horrendous nature of the use of ever again any nuclear bomb anywhere on this planet, and remembering the number of lives that were lost 70 years ago this August because the bomb was used on two large cities of innocent people in southern Japan in August of 1945. And also we had other symbols of that this place could be healed by transforming it into life-sustaining projects and alternatives to war making, like freshly baked bread, or that we were showing as a symbol of what needs to be provided by our society for people in need of food, what needs to be provided in order to have a life-enhancing experience rather than certain death by use of the product which is being made in that facility. We also brought candles to symbolize the light, the truth, that we, the light of truth, that we want to empower people with so they can be critically thinking people and know the truth and act according to it, therefore expose and oppose known crimes of their government and of our government. And we also brought white roses to remember the resistance of some peacemaking, nonviolent people in Germany and Austria during World War II under the oppression of Adolf Hitler as misgoverning their people and misgoverning Germany causing World War II. And what else did we have? We had crime scene tape that we had added the message that this is a criminal activity of nuclear crime scene. So we labeled the building with this danger, caution sign of tape, as you see it whenever something serious is going on in a building. So we labeled the building with crime scene, danger, with that tape, tying it onto 3 pillars that surrounded the corner of the building, which was the security tower. And some Bibles we brought, symbolizing the teaching of Scripture of one of the world's most ancient traditional faith communities, religion, the Hebrew religion and the Christian religion, plus reiterated by many other prophets of other denominations, that life is sacred and all life is to be enhanced, never destroyed. And that was about it. And then we were there about 7 minutes before this security officer's van began coming in at another entrance near the building that we were labeling with the truth. And it slowly drove up the length of the building, which is very long. And so we knew we were prepared to meet him with our lit candles and a statement to tell him why we were there. But he stood out and was making a phone call, and we could hear him saying, "They are peace protesters, so you had better send," and then I suppose he sent more security officers. But he just stood there, and we said we greeted him warmly and offered him some bread, but he was unable to accept that. And we said, "Could we read a message to you?" And so we read the message for everybody. And that message we have, if anybody wants to read it. I have it here in front of me. Are you interested in hearing the message?
Oh, sure. Please read it.
Okay. It begins with, "Come," the Isaiah prophecy in chapter 2 of Isaiah. "Come, let us go up to the mountain of God, to the house where God lives, that God may teach us God's ways, and that we may walk in God's paths. For God will bring justice among the nations and bring peace between many peoples. They will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nations will not lift up swords against nations. No longer will they learn to make war. Come, let us walk in the light of God." That was said more than 2,000 years ago, based on the human life experience of people who deviated from peace building and were causing war and murder among the tribes. Brothers and sisters, powers that be, we come to you today as friends in love. We, like many of you, are people of faith. inspired by many who have gone before us. People like the prophets, Isaiah and Micah, Jesus, as well as Gandhi, and the countless who call us to bear swords into plowshares. May we now transform weapons into real, life-giving alternatives to build true peace. We come to the Y12 facility because our very humanity rejects the designs of nuclear empire and war. Our faith in love and nonviolence encourages us to believe that our activity here is necessary, that we come to invite transformation, undo the past and present work of Y12, disarm and end any further efforts to increase the Y12 capacity for an economy of social structure based upon war-making and empire building. A loving and compassionate Creator invites us to take the urgent and decisive steps to transform this empire and this facility into life-giving alternatives which resolve real problems of poverty and environmental degradation for all. We begin together by preparing our minds and hearts for this transformation. And so we bring gifts to symbolize this transformation, instruments that serve life, peace, truth, and healing to this nuclear weapons plant and everywhere. We bring the life symbols. 1, blood for healing and pouring out our lives in service and love. Our very humanity depends on lives given, not taken. But blood also reminds us of the horrific spilling of blood by nuclear weapons. Our hammers to begin the transforming work of deconstructing war machines, creating new jobs which address real problems and eliminate poverty, heal and foster the fullness of life for all. We bring our truth symbols, candles, for light transforms fear and secrecy into authentic security. Flowers, the white rose of forgiveness, acceptance of friendship, and genuine reconciliation. The crime scene tape and an indictment which point out truth and end lies, which have blinded and dulled the very conscience of nations and serve the interests of justice for healing global relationships. A Bible to remind ourselves to become sources of wisdom and to inspire our acts of conscience as we carry on. Lastly, we bring food, symbolized by this bread, strengthening us as we build this new world where people do not feel compelled to build nuclear weapons in order to feed their families. So may we break and share this bread together in joy and genuine friendship as we work together, empowered by our creating God to transform now. And this was signed by the three of us, Michael Wally, Greg Borgi Obed, and Megan Rice.
And the security guard, he listened to the whole thing?
Very quietly and just stood there, never acted in any way to prevent what we were saying, and I'd say he listened.
Oh, wow. That's...
Confirming the fact that he knew we were peace protesters.
Right. And these actions of breaking into this nuclear facility, they went underreported by the media and downplayed, and basically because of, you know, an embarrassment to the White House.
Well, not just the White House. The White House often is not very much in control. It was very much the local scene that implement the plans made by the administration, the whole administration, and for many, many years, Congress and the administration, as you say, were fostering the production and testing and continued use of nuclear weapons all these 70 years. I don't think we can blame one particular White House for this activity. Just as we can't blame the original people, we are all responsible for exposing and opposing known crimes.
Right. And how long did you have to spend in prison for this?
Yeah. Well, we expected far more than we were actually given, if on the condition that the judiciary is in collusion with those people who are continuing these crimes. And so it happened that many people are not allowing themselves to be enlightened by the truth, and the jury declared that we were actually committing what the government had decided how they decided to name our actions. The first of which was sabotage, or one of which was sabotage, and there were two others that dealt with destruction of government property. And so I was given 35 months because it was my first offense. And Greg and Michael had engaged in previous Plowshares actions, so far to apparent no avail, but we never know the value of each action in resistance and opposition to nuclear weapons in some way. So they got 65 months, each of them.
And all three of you had to carry out your full sentences?
Well, it turned out that didn't work, because we immediately were, a group had volunteered to appeal our case back in May of 2013, when we had been sentenced as guilty of 2 felonies. The lawyers presented their appeal in the appeals court, which was the 6th court for the state of Tennessee, and they decided that our actions certainly did not amount in any way to sabotage. If anything was happening, we were trying to protect the country.
Exactly. And
protect the planet as well. So that they came out and said that we are not guilty of that, and therefore we should be released with immediate effect, because we've already spent more than would be necessary for any kind of, they didn't go into questioning the charge of destruction of government property.
Okay, Jen, how can we overcome the secrecy and blatant distortion of the truth of the horrific risks to planet Earth's survival as we know it, as long as we fail to transform the nuclear weapons and energy industries into possible life-enhancing alternatives, and begin with dismantlement now? We are all equally responsible to know to stop known crimes according to our unique gifts and abilities. How can more people do these things?
I think that people will be motivated to do these things if universities and high schools and grade schools begin to teach the real truth instead of miseducating the public about the original evil of bombing of innocent people in Nagasaki and Hiroshima as an example of what every nuclear weapon is going to do. And also explain the real history of the fact that it was never necessary to end the Japanese theater of war making, because Europe had already ended. Well, their part had already succumbed to Germany had already surrendered at that point, and the victory in Europe had already happened. But most people are not taught, very few, unless they have teachers that are really getting underneath and teaching history from the viewpoint of what really happened. Most people are told that it was a necessary action to, they're just told this, a necessary act to end the Japanese activity in the Pacific. But we know that that's not true, because even as early as September 1944, the Japanese were beginning to negotiate with the State Department's representatives for surrender, the terms of surrender. And we have been told, I mean, I haven't read this myself, but I think it is the truth because of those who tell it, that the one main object they were holding out for in these negotiations was that their emperor, Hirohito, would be treated with honor, that he would not become a war criminal. And so that was being discussed and thought about. And in fact, they had completely lost access to any of the resources that they needed to continue the war. And they had used up all their weapons and were very, very much depleted in the fighting crew, the Army and the Air Force and the Navy of Japan, very, very much depleted by the battles. And also the bombing that had been going on in Japan, which was what we would call carpet bombing in many, many cities of innocent people.
You are quoted as saying, "To remain in prison for the rest of my life would be the greatest gift you could give me."
If it would help to create a wider awareness among the people of the atrocity of ever using a nuclear weapon as never making use of it as a weapon for mass destruction, which it always is.
And what do
and if we could end that, if it takes a life in prison, certainly would be a very honorable reason to be staying in prison.
And what do you think about the recent peace talks with Iran and the nuclear deal with Iran?
I had very great hopes when I realized that this was happening, and have discussed it with reporters who were present at the Non-Proliferation Treaty review, which was going on at the same time at the UN for 1 month in April and May, and with other Iranian diplomats, knowing that all we need is to agree that both of us, not just Iran, will dismantle our nuclear weapons. I feel that Iran is holding out because they know that the United States has at least 7,000 nuclear weapons,
right,
either on reserve or on hairpin alert.
And Israel also.
Yeah. And Israel has 200. Thank you for reminding us of that. Or 300 by now. Who knows the exact number? And very small number in France and Germany, France and Great Britain the other of the 9 nuclear countries, which are held by the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which causes all nations to, in good faith, move toward the dismantlement of all nuclear weapons. In good faith, meaning in a timely manner. And the United States, for one, I don't know about Russia. All, I would say, are holding back. For the example of the United States, the United States is not exceptionally, is not better than any other nation or more privileged in the upholding the international laws that we have signed. And at the moment, we know that these facilities are still open and still functioning, except for Los Alamos. That was not refurbished as yet.
And what are your plans as of today, as far as future, trying to bring awareness to these causes?
Well, it's just that is a plan. Try to build awareness and continue to widen the horizon. I think that's responsibility of all of us who know the truth. I don't expect to be the one able to accomplish that by any means.
Right.
But we all have our responsibility, and we all share in that, and we all create an impact on that. But we cannot minimize or belittle.
And what about the media? Because it did say that you're, gaining access to this Y12 facility was underreported, which is...
Well, I really don't sir, I mean, they're varying. We can't make one general judgment about the media. Certain the media are professional, conscience-observing, professional reporting in the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and others are, I would say, beholden to the secrecy policy of the Department of Defense, since it was the Department of War back in whenever it was established in favor of this effort to become the superpower of the world, but probably also to enhance the industrial complex, which is created and creates the appetite for trading in arms. So as long as there's going to be suspicion between the nations are going to want to trade with what the United States is willing to trade with, including nuclear reactors and highly enriched uranium. It's totally the opposite of those treaties that we've been talking about.
Right. Well, I want to thank you so much, Sister Megan Rice from Transform Now Plowshares, for your time.
And I thank you for being one of the people who really take that responsibility very seriously. And obviously your questions have shown that you're very aware of this nuclear industrial complex that we are all victims of today because of their unstopped and their continuing activity, which robs the people of their life-enhancing alternatives and real needs like education, healthcare, housing, good jobs, and whatever else that needs to be done in the infrastructure of this country, rather than pouring $10 trillion after 70 years into the production of something which is totally malignant to the planet.
Right.
And to all people, yes.
And, just lastly, just trying to get more people to understand that, just working for money every day, just going to work for money instead of, we need to go to work for truth, for justice, yes, and for causes.
Yes, thank you very much. People living out according to their values, yes.
Right. Thank you, Sister Megan Rice.
And thank you, Kat, for your probing questions, which have allowed us to try to share with you what my life experience has taught me.
I could only hope to have your courage, or half your courage.
Yes, right. And I hope that our message will be a stimulus to those who are coming after us in the universities that can have the possibility of designing and creating the life-enhancing alternatives that need to be done with the United States war machine, correct?
Right. Yep.
Yes. We invite everybody, to use their gifts to the full.
To get people to realize that all these wars are not about freedom, they're not about security, they're about, keeping the status quo and the rich richer and the poor poor.
Yes, right. The life enhancement of all, equally, without discrimination. So thank you very much for giving me this time, Kat.
I hope to meet you someday.
And I hope to meet you too, so we would welcome that. Bless you.
Have a great day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.